In 1555, Michel de Nostradamus sat in his study in France and stared at a pool of black water, trying to see an image of the future. His prophecies made him famous, but one prediction disturbed him more than the others.
Out of the deepest part of Western Europe, from poor people, a young child shall be born, who with his tongue shall seduce many people. His fame shall increase in the Eastern Kingdom. He shall come to tyrannize the land. He shall raise up a hatred that had long been dormant. The child of Germany observes no law, cries and tears, fire, blood, and battle.
Tears, fire, blood, and battle, eh? It sounds like my second divorce hearing.
Please, no jokes when I'm trying to build drama.
Sorry, I was triggered. Go ahead.
Germany, a good speaker, rising hatred, war. Nearly 4 centuries before Hitler's birth, Nostradamus saw him coming. Then in 1821, the German Jewish poet Heinrich Heine published a warning. He described a German thunderbolt that would make the world crash. He said eagles in the air would drop dead. The lions in Africa would hide in their dens. Now, to people in the 1800s, it sounded like poetry. To people in the 1940s, it sounded like the Luftwaffe. In 1830, a Bavarian forest worker named Matthias Stormberger also had visions. He saw machines that would change the world, iron wagons moving without horses, great wire boxes carrying voices across vast distances, modern technology described over 100 years too early. But then his visions turned dark. 2 wars would devastate Europe. The first would last 4 years. After this war, money would lose all value. A loaf of bread would cost 1,000 marks. Then would come the Greater War. In 1923, German astrologer Elsbeth Eberton published her annual almanac. One entry stood out, a horoscope for a little-known political agitator named Adolf Hitler. She warned that this man had the chart of someone who could sacrifice himself for Germany, someone who would expose himself to danger through daring acts. She saw violence in his stars. She saw crowds following him. Now, Hitler was nobody, a failed artist turned street speaker. But Eberton's almanac sold thousands of copies. People read her prediction, and some believed. And believing made them watch for him. Across the Atlantic, Edgar Cayce had similar visions. In July 1932, he spoke about a dangerous form of imperialism rising in Europe. In 1935, he predicted war would begin in 1938 or 1939. In 1941, he predicted America's entry into the conflict. Every prediction came true. These weren't vague prophecies about distant futures. These were specific and highly detailed. Prophets across centuries, different countries, different methods, all seeing the same disaster, all describing the same man. In Munich, a small group had been collecting these prophecies for years, but they weren't trying to prevent what was coming. They were trying to create it. Prophets across centuries warned about a German leader who would bring catastrophe. In 1918, someone was paying attention. In the back room of a Munich hotel, a small group met to discuss Germany's future. They called themselves the Thule Society. They believed an ancient race lived beneath the earth. These beings gave humanity its knowledge and technology, and they chose the German people as their successors.
Lizard people?
No, they were called the Vrilya, a race of giants who escaped the Great Flood and created an underground kingdom called
The Gatha?
Yep, the Thule Society had money and influence. Judges, police chiefs, military officers. They funded the German Workers' Party. That party became the Nazis. But they needed a voice, a leader who could channel this destiny. Dietrich Eckart sat in a smoke-filled room, watching a young corporal rant to a crowd. Eckart didn't see a soldier, he saw potential. Eckart was the Thule Society's most influential member. He claimed to have seen a vision during a seance, a man who would rise to lead Germany, a Führer. Eckart believed that man was Hitler. For 4 years, Eckart became Hitler's mentor. He gave him money, connections, influence, everything he needed to rise. In December 1923, Eckart was dying. Witnesses claimed his final words were about his greatest creation.
Follow Hitler. He will dance, but it is I who have called the tune. I have initiated him into the secret doctrine, opened his centers of vision, and given him the means to communicate with the powers.
And Hitler dedicated Mein Kampf to Eckhart.
And among them, I want also to count that man, one of the best, who devoted his life to the awakening of our people, Dietrich Eckhart.
Eckhart called the tune. Hitler learned to dance. And across Germany, audiences started to believe they were watching destiny unfold. Dietrich Eckhart molded Hitler into a leader, but orchestration required more than mysticism. It required showmanship. Erich Jan Hannessen was a con man. He reinvented himself as a Danish nobleman with psychic powers. But Hannessen understood something most magicians didn't. Power isn't about predicting the future. It's about making people believe that you can. Hannessen stood in front of a mirror with Hitler, correcting his posture. He taught the future dictator how to turn a trembling hand into a fist, how to turn a whisper into a roar. Hitler was a mediocre speaker. Hannessen turned him into a force of nature.
Oh, great. A dictator gets a life coach. What could possibly go wrong?
But Hannessen's greatest gift was prophecy itself. In February 1933, Hannessen hosted an exclusive event at his Palace of the Occult. He entered a trance and spoke a prophecy.
I see a great house in flames. It is not a little house. It is a very big, official-looking building, and it will be consumed by flames before the end of this month. I see this with absolute certainty.
5 days later, the Reichstag building burned, and Hitler seized power. But Hannessen knew too much. 3 weeks later, his body was found in a field, 3 bullets in the back of the head. With Hannessen gone, Joseph Goebbels stepped in. As Minister of Propaganda, Goebbels continued the Hitler prophecy. On January 30th, 1939, Hitler addressed the Reichstag. Goebbels wrote the speech. Hitler delivered it.
Today, I will once more be a prophet if the international Jewish financiers in and outside Europe should succeed in plunging the nations once more into a world war. Then the result will not be the Bolshevization of the earth, and thus the victory of Jewry, but the annihilation of the Jewish race in Europe.
That was more than a prophecy. It was a promise. And Goebbels made sure everyone in Germany understood. Hitler wasn't just predicting the future, he was creating it. Prophecy became policy. Prediction became propaganda. And Goebbels was about to weaponize it on a scale the world had never seen. Joseph Goebbels established an entire department dedicated to one purpose: weaponizing Nostradamus. The propaganda ministry hired scholars to comb through the prophet's quatrains, not to study them, to edit them. They printed millions of forged pamphlets, each one carefully crafted to look like authentic 16th century prophecies, each one predicting inevitable German victory. Nazi planes dropped them over France and England by the thousands. The Allies found them everywhere, in the streets, in fields, tucked into mailboxes. Then the British responded with their own forgeries. Both sides manufactured prophecies, dropping them from the sky like propaganda bombs.
This propaganda war still happens today, but now the pamphlets are called tweets.
I can't argue with that. For 3 years, this prophecy war worked. The German people believed. Victory was written in the stars, ordained by ancient seers. Victory was inevitable. Then Rudolf Hess destroyed everything. Hess was Hitler's deputy Führer. He'd been with the party since the early Munich days. But Hess had a secret. He believed in astrology more than he believed in Hitler. In May 1941, Hess consulted his personal astrologer, who said that the planets were aligned for peace negotiations. Saturn and Jupiter formed a favorable angle. Mars was in retreat. If Hess flew to Scotland now, he could negotiate peace with Britain and save Germany from a two-front war.
He based his flight plan on a horoscope?
He trusted the stars more than he trusted his generals.
He better hope Mercury isn't in Gatorade.
Retrograde.
What'd I say?
On May 10th, 1941, Hess flew 900 miles across the North Sea. He parachuted into a Scottish field and demanded to meet Churchill. The British arrested him immediately. During interrogation, Hess explained his mission.
I have come on my own initiative, since England cannot win the war. If we make peace now, each nation can rebuild what has been lost. But if we wait, if we continue this madness, more will die. Thousands more, millions perhaps. Please, you must listen, before it is too late for all of us.
Churchill thought he was crazy. When Hitler found out, he was furious. Not because Hess failed, because Hess revealed what Hitler tried to hide, the prophecy. Hitler ordered a purge. The SS called it Action Hess. Within weeks, over 600 astrologers were arrested across Germany. Some were sent to concentration camps. Others simply disappeared. The same prophets who helped manufacture Hitler's destiny were now too dangerous to let live. The prophecy war was over, but its damage was done. The German people were taught to believe in fate, to trust that victory was written in the stars. That belief became a weapon pointed at their own future. Goebbels manufactured prophecies. He created a narrative of inevitable victory. But there is one prophecy he couldn't control, one that waited for over 2,000 years. Ancient Persia, 486 BC. King Xerxes ruled the Persian Empire, but the man who whispered in his ear was Haman. Haman wasn't just an advisor, he was the Grand Vizier, the second most powerful man in the world. When he walked through the streets, everyone was required to bow. But one day, a Jewish man named Mordecai refused to bow. Haman was furious. He convinced Xerxes to issue an order. On a specific date, all Jews in the empire would be killed. But Haman had a problem. He didn't know Queen Esther was Jewish. Mordecai was her cousin. When he learned of Haman's plan, he sent a secret message to the queen. Then Esther waited. She hosted elaborate banquets. Night after night, she gained the king's trust. Then she made her move. At the final banquet, she revealed everything: her Jewish identity, Haman's genocide order, and evidence that Haman was embezzling from the royal treasury. Xerxes was furious. He ordered Haman hanged on the same gallows Haman built for Mordecai, a structure 75 feet high, visible across the entire city.
Yeah, when you build your own execution device, maybe rethink your life choices.
But Esther wasn't finished. Haman's 10 sons had copies of the genocide orders. They would continue their father's plan. Esther demanded their death as well. All 10 were found hanging the next morning. When Jewish scribes recorded the story centuries later, something strange happened. In the verses listing Haman's 10 sons, 3 Hebrew letters were written smaller than usual: Tav, Shin, and Zayin. One letter was written large, Vav. In Hebrew, letters have numerical values. The small letters add up to 707. The large letter equals 6. Together, they form the Jewish year 5707. On our calendar, that's 1946. The scribes were encoding a date. The pattern Esther established, 10 enemies hanged for attempting genocide, would repeat. And just as prophecy said, it would repeat on October 1946. When Jewish scribes recorded the Book of Esther 2,400 years ago, they encoded a date in Hebrew letters, the Jewish year 5707, October 1946. That exact month, in Nuremberg, Germany, several Nazi leaders were sentenced to death by hanging. 2 hours before the executions, Hermann Goering bit down on a cyanide capsule in his cell. He took his own life. That left 10. The executions began just after 1 a.m., and one by one, Nazi war criminals climbed 13 steps to the gallows, the same number of steps Haman built. Each man was asked for final words. Julius Streicher was 9th. He looked at the witnesses. His last words? Purim Fest, 1946. Purim is the Jewish holiday celebrating Queen Esther's victory over Haman. Streicher knew exactly what was happening. He was fulfilling a 2,400-year-old prophecy. Hitler knew it too. In 1944, he warned his officers that if Germany lost, the Jews would celebrate a second Purim. He knew the pattern. He just thought he could break it. By dawn on October 16th, all 10 bodies were cut down. Not 9, not 11. 10 Nazi war criminals hanged for genocide, the same number as Haman's sons. The same crime, the same punishment. The prophecy demanded it. The Hebrew letters in the Book of Esther weren't a warning, they were an instruction, an ancient pattern that couldn't be broken. The Nazis spent years trying to manufacture their own destiny. They edited prophecies, murdered astrologers. But in the end, the only prophecy that mattered was the one they tried to destroy, a Jewish text. But the pattern returned, and the prophecy was fulfilled. Exactly as it was predicted, 2,400 years ago. The Nazis spent years manufacturing prophecies, editing ancient texts, murdering astrologers who predicted the wrong futures. But 10 Nazis hanged at Nuremberg, just like Haman's sons. The pattern returned exactly as written. So, how much of this is real? Well, let's look at the pieces. Elsbeth Eberton did publish a horoscope for Adolf Hitler in her 1924 almanac. She warned that he had the chart of someone who could sacrifice himself for Germany. Hitler was already a public figure, a street agitator. But this wasn't prophecy, it was political commentary disguised as astrology.
Yeah, and cable news does astrology disguised as political commentary.
I don't know what you mean.
Yeah, you do.
Erich Johannesson did predict the Reichstag fire 5 days before it burned. He was executed 3 weeks later. But his prediction wasn't psychic ability, it was inside knowledge. Hanesson probably knew the plan and maybe even helped coordinate it. He was murdered to keep him quiet. The Nostradamus quatrains are real, but Goebbels' propaganda ministry changed them. The original texts are vague enough to apply to dozens of historical figures. A young child from poor people could be anyone. The Nazi version made them specific, made them point to Hitler. That's not prophecy, that's selective editing.
Government editing source material to fit their narrative. Oh, thank goodness we moved past that.
Are you being
Of
sarcastic?
course I'm being sarcastic.
The Book of Esther is more interesting. The Hebrew letter variations exist in every ancient manuscript we have. The numerical values do add up to 5707, the Jewish year corresponding to 1946. But scholars debate whether this was intentional or not. But the parallel is documented fact. 10 Nazis were hanged at Nuremberg for genocide. The same crime, the same punishment, the same fate as Haman's 10 sons. Was this prophecy or coincidence? Or something stranger? A belief so strong that it bent reality to match ancient text. Here's what we know. Prophecy doesn't have to be true to change the future. It just has to be believed. The Nazis committed unthinkable crimes because they thought it was predetermined. That's the real danger. Not prophecy, the manipulation of prophecy, the weaponization of belief. And we see this today. We're told what to think by people in power. We're given narratives disguised as news. And throughout history, dictators used prophecy to manufacture consent, to make people believe their destiny was fixed. Today, it's not prophecy, it's expert consensus. It's follow the science. Anything that questions the narrative is now labeled misinformation. And we have a responsibility to question what we're told, to examine who benefits from our fear, and to resist those who want to control us through a manufactured narrative. Your future isn't written in ancient texts or planetary movements or expert predictions. Your future is determined by your choices. You can think for yourself or believe what you're told. The choice is yours. So choose wisely, choose freely, and choose courageously. Because the only prophecy that matters is the one you write yourself.